Nothing on this old Volvo works in the cold. This old Volvo has been sitting for a long time, and in this episode I'm trying to wake up everything it needs to finally move again. Air system, brakes, hydraulics, and the crane that needs to lift a heavy diesel tank off the bed before this truck can even think about going home. The episode starts on one of the coldest days of the winter. The air system on the Volvo F87 is completely frozen. Without air, I have no brakes and no hydraulics at all, so I start with the only thing I can reach, a stubborn valve in the air system that refuses to do its job. I unbolt the valve on the truck, bring it back home to the workshop, and decide to rebuild it on the bench, where it is at least a little bit warmer. This little part is a Wobco overflow valve, number 434100123. It's an 8mm charging or pressure limiting valve that opens at around 5 bar in the air brake system. In plain language, when the pressure gets high enough, this valve lets air through to the next circuit, so we don't overload anything. On old Volvos like this, it sits in the main supply line and decides when another part of the brake system is allowed to wake up. I've never taken one of these valves apart before, so this should be fun. I cleaned the valve with brake cleaner. Brake cleaner burns really well, so you definitely don't want any open flames or hot parts nearby when you're working with it. Old, sticky grease, moisture and dirt have been sitting in here for years. Piece by piece I clean it, inspect the parts and re-grease everything so it can move freely again. This rubber diaphragm is not in great shape, but it will have to do for now. A bit of silicone grease might put it in a better mood, or at least help it seal a little longer. Next day I head back out to the Volvo with the rebuilt valve. I'm taking the chance to pour a little alcohol and oil into the first air tank. That should help fight moisture in the system and give the air components a bit of extra lubrication. I bolt it back onto the air system, double check the connections, and then fire up the engine to see if anything has changed. The plan is simple. If the valve works, the compressor should start to build pressure for the brake system and the hydraulics. This jump starter is probably the best thing I've bought in a long time. I've used it a lot, and it's one of those tools that makes you think, why didn't I buy this years ago? Come on, build some air pressure. But sometimes old trucks have other plans. The pressure refuses to climb to where it needs to be. The brakes are still not happy, the hydraulics are still dead, and after a lot of waiting and hoping, I have to accept that this was not the magic fix. So I shut it down, pack my tools, and head home again. Another day, another failed attempt. New day, slightly warmer weather, time for plan B. I start by wrapping the truck in tarps and insulation, then fire up the diesel heater to try and warm everything through. If the normal way of building pressure through the compressor does not work, I will try to feed air into the system from the outside instead. Back at the truck, I bring a separate compressor and a lot of patience. The idea is to fill the frozen air system backwards and give it some help. Before I do that, I fill the hose with a mix of alcohol and oil to loosen moisture and give the internal parts a bit of lubrication as the air goes in. First, I try to feed air from the cab, but the system is still too blocked to respond. So I crawl under the truck and go straight to the air tank for the brakes. Here I can connect my own hose and try to push air directly into the system. And slowly the gauge starts to move. This time, the pressure finally comes up. The frozen air system begins to wake up. I start the Volvo again, and now the truck actually builds pressure in all the systems by itself. The brakes come alive, and the hydraulics are no longer completely dead. I test the brakes carefully. rolling a little and making sure the truck will both move and stop. Then I take it for a short test drive and park it in a better spot. For the first time in a long time, this truck feels a little bit less like yard art and a little bit more like a machine again. It feels really good, like a huge motor block has finally been lifted off my shoulders.
Anders? Hallå? Hallå?
With some air in the system, it's finally time to test the hydraulics properly. If the crane works, I can lift the big diesel tank off the bed and get one step closer to bringing the Volvo home. I engage the PTO, pull the levers, and the crane starts to move by itself. The valve block is sticking, so the crane starts swinging with no control. Once I get the controls back under control and lift the crane a little, the next problem appears. Hydraulic oil is leaking badly from an old welded coupling in the system. Someone has tried to repair it before, and that repair is not holding up. I can't just ignore a leak like this. So I stop the test, pull the faulty coupling off the crane, and bring it home for surgery. Back in the workshop the next day, I clean up the old weld and re-weld the coupling, trying to give it a second chance at life. The goal is simple, no more leaks, just solid hydraulic pressure where it belongs. When the metal has cooled down and I am happy with the repair, I head out to the Volvo again for another test. The new old coupling goes back in. The hoses are tightened, and once again I fire up the truck and engage the hydraulics. The crane immediately starts to swing by itself again. The valve block is still sticking. Once I wrestle the crane back under control, something interesting happens. This time there's no obvious leak, and the crane mostly responds the way it should. It feels more like the linkages and valves have a mind of their own, or maybe they've just gone a bit senile with age. I've driven cranes before, but always newer ones with remote controls. On this old setup, there is no remote to save me, just stiff levers and guesswork. Slowly, I lift the heavy diesel tank off the bed of the truck and swing it down onto the ground beside it. It's a simple move, but for this project, it's a big moment. For the first time, the truck is finally free from that heavy load on the bed. At this point, everything that needed to work in this episode has done its job. The air system is alive again, the brakes work, the hydraulics and the crane are functional, and the diesel tank is safely on the ground. The Volvo is now much closer to being ready for the drive home. But that is a story for another episode. If you like this kind of slow, honest truck revival and want to see if this old Volvo actually makes it all the way home, hit like and subscribe for more old Volvo battles and workshop adventures. It really helps keep this heavy metal revival moving forward, and I need it.